I didn't catch them in a moment that felt cinematic. There was no shattered glass, no dramatic pause in the doorway. The front door was unlocked when it shouldn't have been, and that was the first thing that registered. The second was laughter, hers unguarded, unfamiliar in its ease, floating down the hall like it belonged to someone else's house. I stood there longer than I want to admit. Long enough to understand what I was hearing without needing to see it. Long enough to decide that whatever came next would be something I chose, not something that happened to me. When I finally stepped into the bedroom, neither of them noticed right away. They were too absorbed in the ordinary intimacy of it, talking, not rushing. That detail lodged itself somewhere permanent. When she saw me, she didn't scream. She just went still, like someone who realizes the room has been recording the whole time. I didn't ask questions. I didn't raise my voice. I walked back out, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. My hands were steady, which felt like a betrayal of its own. I remember thinking that this calm would either save me or cost me something. I couldn't name yet. They left separately. He wouldn't meet my eyes. She tried to speak, then stopped, as if searching for the version of me who used to accept half-finished explanations. By the time the door closed, the house felt larger, emptier, and strangely orderly. I spent the next hour doing nothing. No pacing, no drinking. I replayed smaller moments instead, the times I'd been told I was imagining distance. The way concerns were reframed as my insecurity. I realized how carefully I'd been trained to doubt my own reactions. Rage would have been simpler. Silence made room for accounting. The idea to call his wife didn't come like lightning. It arrived slowly, dressed up as responsibility. She deserved to know. That was the sentence I kept repeating, sanding off the parts that sounded like punishment. I told myself I wasn't exposing them. I was correcting a distortion. Still, my finger hovered over the screen longer than it needed to. When she answered, she was in a bright room, domestic noise behind her. The contrast felt obscene. I introduced myself. I watched confusion tighten into something sharper as I turned the camera, as voices from my hallway bled into her living room. There was no speech prepared for this. Evidence doesn't need narration. She didn't cry. She asked one precise question, then another. The kind of questions people ask when they are all ready, rearranging their lives in their heads. When the call ended, I felt neither satisfaction nor relief, just the irreversible click of something set in motion. After that, events stopped belonging to me. Lawyers spoke in measured tones. Workplaces were notified. Calendars filled with meetings that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with liability. Authority didn't storm in. It seeped. Decisions were documented. Language hardened. What had been personal became procedural. People asked how I was holding up. I gave answers that sounded reasonable. Inside, I was inventorying the cost. There is a particular loneliness that comes from being believed too late, from watching the truth do exactly what you thought it would do and realizing that didn't make it feel better. She tried once more to talk, not to deny it, but to contextualize it, to explain how exposure had gone too far. I listened, surprised by how little I felt. The argument wasn't about what happened anymore. It was about who I had become by refusing to keep it quiet. That question followed me longer than the anger ever could. I had acted. I had shifted the balance. But dignity, I learned, isn't automatically preserved by being right. Sometimes it's thinned by the very clarity you use to defend it. In the end, there was no scene where I reclaimed myself in a single, decisive moment. Just distance. Fewer messages. A life reorganized around absence. The consequences continued without my supervision, which was the point. Control, once returned, didn't need to be exercised. I don't regret making the call. I regret believing it would close the wound. What it did was stop the bleeding. Healing turned out to be quieter work. done far from screens and choices no one else witnessed. If there's a victory here, it's not the collapse I saw through a phone. It's the calm that came later. When I realized I no longer needed to prove anything. Not to them, not to myself.